I want you to take a moment to reflect on what you were doing this time last year. So have a minute and think about that. It was April 2019. Maybe you're looking forward to seeing your family for Easter, or at the LeadDev conference in New York, or doing a product launch. For me, it was a new team in a new city. Things are a little different now. I think very few of us are busy thinking of their products. So maybe a more fitting question would be by starting with, how okay are you today? Somewhere on a spectrum? I hope I'm wrong, but maybe more of us are on the not okay side this year. My name is Șerban, and I'm leading Bloomberg's engineering team in Hong Kong. In the last 10 months, Hong Kong has been rocked by anti-government protests. Then, because of its proximity to mainland China, it was one of the first cities affected by the coronavirus pandemic. In the next 20 minutes or so, I'll share how I've learned to prepare for disruption, adapt, and support our people through what proved to be one of the most challenging events in their life, as well as mine. We'll cover 5 broad areas: readiness, safety, mental health, productivity, and effective communications. The protests have been the trigger for us to think very seriously about disaster planning. This is where I'll first focus my talk, getting ready. Don't kid yourself, you're never ready enough, but you can prepare enough to survive the storm. At Bloomberg, we put together a crisis task force to plan for everything, from staff safety to supply chains to handling software outages. It's important to define your scenarios and let that lead your planning. What if transportation is disrupted? What if there is an internet blackout? What if key personnel becomes incapacitated? And foremost, take care of employee safety. When it comes to safety, a fundamental part is being able to contact everyone. So have a redundant channel, like WhatsApp maybe. It doesn't hurt to have a broadcasting system as well, because not everyone reads their emails through the night. Once you've done that, put it to test. Murphy's laws tell us that that person missing from your list will need you the most. And this is a point I'll make throughout my presentation. Do not leave anyone behind. Now that you've prepared, disaster will strike. For us, it was during the Chinese New Year, when many employees were traveling abroad to spend time with their families. We decided to close the office and work remotely because of the growing infection risk. And one of their first questions was, can I stay where I am? I feel safer in my home country. Allowing that flexibility was the right thing to do. We did not want people to feel they had to choose between work and their personal safety. But it was not an easy decision to make. An engineer asked me if he could leave Hong Kong, but he was not sure he'd have internet access in his hometown. And I could not contact, in time, anyone in my management chain to consult with them. But this is the time when safety trumps all other considerations. So I let him do it. The lesson from here: peacetime guidelines need to be adapted. And our role as leaders is either to empower people to do that or take the courage to break some glass ourselves. Another staff member was in China for a longer holiday. And as news about city lockdowns and flight cancellations were piling up, I so much wanted him back. But we felt we should not interfere with their personal decision. They chose to complete the trip and were able to come back just before the border crossing was restricted. It was a great reminder for me to support our employees' choices and not to overreact to the news. As we passed our initial phase, where safety was the primary concern, the next monster was lurking around the corner. As you all know by now, this is not normal remote work. It's not your choice. You're not on the beach with your laptop. And the sudden change in working patterns add to the mad reality of what's going on outside. There is a pandemic raging out there and the shelves are empty. My first thoughts were for those at risk of isolation, living alone or without any relatives in the city. And they put in place a system where they'd be contacted at least twice daily by 2 different people. However, I soon learned that everyone had a different story. One of them was completely exhausted after a week of careful showering and washing their clothes after every trip outside. And they couldn't bear it anymore. Someone else mentioned in passing how they haven't stepped outside of their house in weeks. And a parent wished they could leave Hong Kong, but the idea of keeping their child entertained without the books and toys from home made them change their mind. This is how I learned not to assume. Everyone needs help, and they all need a different kind of support. But it's not easy to break the ice. Some are reluctant to open up because everyone struggles. Why should I share my own burdens with you? With others, it was difficult to understand their emotions because the distance masked the body language. And this is a time when all of the advice books out there tell you about the value of face-to-face communication. But you don't have this tool in your toolset anymore. This is how I've learned how important it is to make myself vulnerable. Talking about my own struggles, my own stress, my own lack of toilet paper, or how I struggle to work with the kids around. Oh yes, you've got the kids. Initially, I was incredibly anxious about my kids showing up on screen during an important meeting. And that only added to the growing stress. But then I realized that they don't have anywhere else to go. This is their house, not only mine. And accepting that reality was a huge relief. I'm not here to deny my kids the right of being kids or banish them to some other part of the house. There is a lot of recycled advice out there telling you to keep the kids away when you work. At a time like this, such advice is straight out toxic. So to rub some salt into it, here's how we do it at Bloomberg. Now, let's talk about language. If you're of a particular nationality these days, it's probably the 20th time this morning when you heard a joke about you and the virus, and you're sick of it. I think it's important for us as leaders to mind that sort of language and either lead by example or remind people to be kind. And don't forget that everyone goes through this differently. Their worries, their circumstances, their family's exposure to the pandemic is different. So don't dismiss anyone. Speaking about worries, something that's in many people's minds right now is their job security. Of course, there's plenty of news about an economic downturn, maybe worse than the financial crisis. Your employees are hearing that and they're not immune to it. So if you're in a position to offer them certainty, don't hold it back. When our global engineering head shared with our employees that the business is going well and their jobs are safe, there was such a tremendous sense of relief. I had some of them coming back to me saying that was on everyone's mind, the most important thing he said. But all of this took a toll on me. I found myself one night pacing my room at 2 a.m., boiling over some project-related issues. Then it dawned on me that I've been doing this for years. So what's different now that I'm losing sleep over it? It clicked in my mind that it's not the work or the delayed project or that conflict that has taken over me. It was the pandemic stress masquerading as a work-related issue. I was talking about this incident after this incident with one of my colleagues, and I could hear over the phone as they were repeatedly banging on the table. So I asked what was wrong. Oh, there's projects and deadlines, and I can't agree on priorities. It was a good time to use my own experience to help him put those issues in the right perspective. Deadlines and priorities are what we do day in and day out as leaders, and we don't lose sleep over them. Or maybe do we? Nothing can beat having a strong relationship with the people you lead. But we are not, at least the majority of us, trained psychologists. And this is why we have invited a professional to speak to us about these challenges. We initially focused on building resilience in the midst of Hong Kong's protests. How do you avoid losing your mind when the world around you is seemingly falling apart? And the key is as simple as it is powerful. Accept that there are things in your life you cannot control. It proved to be a fitting piece of advice for when the coronavirus crisis came along. Now, with a broader plan to support our employees' mental health, it was time to introduce some fun. There is a ton of advice about what to do in a time like this with your team. Online games, virtual drinks, story nights. What we learned though was to go and ask our teams about what they like. And somehow unsurprisingly, their own ideas stuck a lot better than those amazing ideas we read about in blogs. My favorite is a tic-tac-toe game played on a colleague's wallboard. And remember, while you as a leader want to help others, you can't do that without taking care of yourself. So make sure you drink enough water, take regular breaks, and if possible, without breaking the law, have a daily walk outside. At the risk of repeating often shared advice, I will mention how important it is to have a daily routine and separate work from the rest of your life at home. It's a difficult exercise, but all the more valuable. However, we've also got a business to run. I put together, based on my team's feedback, some of the top factors for good productivity. Ergonomics, having a good chair, and a large screen are top of the list when it comes to personal comfort. To keep the team happy, responsiveness from other team members is key. Good audio is an often overlooked aspect. You can ruin all your meetings if you have to keep saying, "Excuse me, I couldn't hear that." So make sure everyone in your team has quality headphones. But a good home setup costs money. Some in my team are passionate gamers and they have better systems at home than the company laptop. But I did not want others to feel a financial burden on top of the health crisis. So Bloomberg is offering everyone $500 to offset the expenses with their home setup. I think that's money really well spent. A few days after we started working from home, I went to my team and asked them what we could change to make it work better. What they missed the most was the ability to turn around and ask a question or share a piece of code. It was also harder to get someone's attention. So we started to do live code reviews. And to improve responsiveness, we've all changed our chat notification settings to be alerted when a team member posts a message. A very simple change made a big difference. The lesson here: there's a whole conference track dedicated to working from home. And just now, you are listening to my advice on the topic. But when you go back, ask your team for suggestion and listen. They are the ones to know best. There is a thinking trap that you should quickly adopt strategies that are working for long-term remote companies. Their advice isn't wrong, but it will take time for your team to adapt. So let them drive the process and discover step by step what works for them. One area where it's important to move quickly, though, is autonomy. On one hand, you're probably swamped with pandemic-related work. And on the other hand, with a team that's physically away, they have less opportunities to ask for guidance. So consider delegating some of your decision-making in order to unblock them. I want to talk now about a topic I invite you not to rush into. We've all grabbed our laptops, went home, pulled a chair and a desk and started to work. And there is an expectation that all we need is to hold on just for a little bit and things will go back to normal. However, without trying to be a prophet, I look back and we've been working remotely for 10 weeks now. The situation is nowhere the better. So give your team time to adjust, to get over the initial shock. But as they settle in, do think about the longer term. What if it takes all summer? What if it takes the whole year? There are certain aspects that need to be done differently when your horizon is 1 year versus a month. How will you evaluate your employees' performance after a full year of remote work? How do you keep them engaged? Are you ready to onboard new employees fully remotely? Another crucial aspect in managing a crisis is communication. Your team will look up to you for reliable information. In the absence of it, people will start believing rumors. So make an effort to over-communicate. Let your staff know there is a plan and be transparent about how it is executed. And if you have people managers under you, enable them to make the right decisions. In a time like this, you might be tempted to keep your cards close to your chest. Events change by the day and you don't want to appear like you change your mind. But those people will make decisions in a spur of a moment. And if you keep them well informed, they'll be able to make better decisions for you. Now, as I'm drawing to a close, I want to share another personal story. I moved to Hong Kong about a year ago. And as I was adjusting to life here, I was given a piece of advice about my relationship with my now remote manager. It was in the form of a question. How will your manager know that you're stressed? Fast forward 1 year and yet again I found myself sleepless past midnight because for weeks on end, every day brought a new crisis. Border closures, empty shelves, the virus spreading and coping with people problem. And that's when that question rang in my mind again. My boss had no idea what I was going through, so I sent a short email. I am stressed. There's talk about food shortages, and people are thinking about leaving Hong Kong. He was in New York at the time, at 12 hours difference, and he was quick to reply. He, of course, offered his help, but he also shared how much he appreciated my work during an incredibly challenging time. It doesn't get any tougher than this. And you've done an incredible job there, he said. I read that, I showed it to my wife, he put a big smile on my face, and I went to bed. In that particular instance, a good word was all I needed to hear. The lesson: have a special communication channel with someone with whom you can share unfiltered all of your worries. It's good for your own sanity. Now, looking back, through the presentation, we've covered the importance of preparedness, how safety takes over all other considerations, taking care of your people's mental health, the value of productivity implements, and planning effective communications while at the same time making sure you have your own safety valve. Stay safe and take care. Thank you.